The world is dead. It died a long time ago, but humanity denies it. You keep the earth on life support. You feign that you have any measure of control over your fate, that you are anything but a doomed race. You did not prevent the apocalypse. You did not save the world. The apocalypse came and went, and you missed it. Now the rules are broken. Now monsters are free to flock to the earth. Flies laying eggs in a ripening corpse. The maggots writhe their way through the rotting meat. You squash a few, and a few more escape to take flight. You convince yourselves that you can keep it up forever, but you fail to see there are worse things than the flies. You fail to see the vultures circling overhead. Humanity has lost. You have lost. You live a mockery of a life that you can't possibly believe should be allowed to continue. The only sane thing left to do is to let it all end.
I want to talk about Sword Interval. And if that opening monologue doesn't explain why, then I don't know what to tell you. Because if I heard that at the beginning of a game or a movie, I would have no idea what to expect, but I would be pumped as hell. Now, I want to talk about it because it feels like it's in the final arc, and it's quickly ramping up to the crescendo of the whole story. I feel it deserves way more attention as it does. However, I don't want to spoil anything, so the audio will be as spoiler-free as I can make it, excluding the first arc, which is only the first 16 pages. The video will have minor spoilers on monster designs, but I can't talk about how amazing they are without showing at least a little. So, quick rundown. Sword Interval is an urban fantasy online comic first published mid-2015 by Ben Fluter. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Who also wrote Derelict and Parallel Dementia. I haven't read either, so I don't know their quality. However, Sword Interval is great, and if his other work is similar, I look forward to them. And so it's about the main character, Fall Burrows, becoming a monster hunter in a world that's basically our own, but with magic mixed in a way that doesn't feel out of place. Magic and monsters are common knowledge, but it's like serial killers or bears. They technically can be anywhere, but you never thought it would happen to you. Until it does. There's a central world organization called Atlas that hunts down big supernatural threats, but they often put up rewards for certain kills so independent bounty hunters can clean up the mess for cash. It's a nice payday for Fall, but it's not why she's in it. To paraphrase one of the other main characters, there are three kinds of hunters. The first, they want fame, admiration, or thrill. The second, only knows how to hurt things, so might as well get paid for it. And the third, the most common, revenge. And of course, because it came last on the list, Fall is in it for revenge with a capital R. But she's not that experienced yet, so in the first arc, she heads to Titan Folly, Arizona to convince a retired hunter to join her. And yes, Titan Folly is built in the skeleton of a titan. I'm gonna deviate here for a paragraph to gush about Ben's world because I love it. The ideas told with just the image of Titan Folly is a grade A example of in-world storytelling in the bleak, endless sands of the Arizona deserts. Of course, someone would build a town in a giant skeleton, building around where the shadows would be cast. And this sets up the world in one simple image. Monsters exist, they can be a clear, dangerous threat, and it's just another day in this world. Ben does a great job of showing and not telling the story of his world, and it all feels centered in such a way that the craziness we see doesn't feel out of place. Unusual, yes, but not that it couldn't happen. But slightly more than that, the rules of the world are consistent. He doesn't feed them to us verbatim, or even all at once, but enough to understand how things work, and what is and is not available to our heroes. Near the beginning of the final arc crescendo, a chunk of information is given to us that contextualizes everything that has come before and puts such a twist on the reason for the final arc. And it's a twist that seems to come from nowhere, but it makes so much sense in the world that you realize Ben either has been planning this from the start, or he's the king of bullshit, and I don't care which. So back at Titanfall, where everything has a bone pun name, and I love it, Fall does some actual sleuthing, which is good to see. Far too often in stories like this, the trouble just finds them. Fall tracks down the supernatural being that's kidnapping people, and right now I want you to think of what a spirit bound to a clay shell might look like. I almost guarantee you didn't think anything close to what Ben has here. I mean, look at this thing! It's disgustingly cool, with his gross noodle arms and beetle carapace head. All of Ben's monsters are like this. From spirits to common mythological monsters, nothing is what you think it is. It looks otherworldly and uniquely suited to this story. I mean, look at this thing! You want to take a guess? This is a basilisk. And every one of his monsters is like this. Beautiful in a weird, creative way, and I just want more of this world. So Fall gets into a fight with this thing, and this is another strong suit of Ben's. His fights are so fluid and impactful, you almost see the in-between frames and feel when a solid hit lands. And we get into something I said earlier about Ben showing, not telling. Fall realizes a weakness of this spirit, and I don't want to say lesser stories, but other stories would have had her say out loud what she figured out, as to not leave us behind, but the panels show us in such a way that saying it out loud becomes redundant, and it makes you feel that Ben respects his audience attention. Comics are, after all, a visual media. Don't verbalize things when you don't have to. So Fall fights this thing, chases it down to its lair, and kills it. But here we find a theme of Sword Interval, of people doing bad things for what they think are good reasons. Even the opening narrator says, "This world is dying. Don't prolong the suffering, just let it die." And it's a theme that runs deep. There isn't a person who doesn't play into it. They all do things they think are for the best, either for themselves or the world or the people they love. Some of them see the mistake. Others, not so much. The few gripes I have with the comic are nitpicks at best. I would have liked to have seen at least a montage of other hunts they've been on, but I understand why it's not always possible. The only other thing is that one of the go-to concepts that gets drawn are these little tendrils with hands on them, and they're so small. They look like baby hands on the ends of wet linguini. They're powerful enough to pull a tree up by its roots. It is odd with how good Ben is with showing power and force. Ben draws them in the first page and makes them seem so dangerous, and then changes it later on. In the end, I give Sword Interval a solid rating. Read the first arc. It's only 16 pages, and if it doesn't intrigue you, then it's not for you. But I hope you find it interesting, and you can read through it in 3-ish hours, so it doesn't take up too much time. I shall leave you with the opening narration of Arc 2. And until next time, don't forget to spread the weird. Good night, friends.
O child, O destroyer, O harbinger, O conqueror worm, O beast. Your bastion is a ruin, the world you know a flame. I wonder, does this seem the end to you? Perhaps this only feels natural. We are all to be consumed by Inferno. The fire cannot be denied. It cannot be contained, in spite of what our mutual jailers envision. Ha! Those eyes. That is no defeat. That is defiance. Good. Remember that. In contempt of what may come, remember that. Remember that you felt no fear, only defiance. Now rise, for there is much work to be done.